Hey, Future Lawyer. Welcome to the LSAT Simplified podcast presented by Hey Future Lawyer, where we talk about all things LSAT, law school admissions, and otherwise. If you want to check out our free LSAT course, go to heyfuturelawyer.com to sign up for a free account today. Alrighty, hey folks. So this is the August 2025 LSAT recap. Now, I quickly want to note that my recap is going to be different from many other recaps on the internet because this is about actionable advice and things you can actually focus on. A lot of LSAT recaps are focused on clickbait, honestly, and things that feel good to talk about. And we are going to touch on a few things, but we're also going to be touching on why they don't matter. So a few things we're going to touch on is one, the curve. And actually, let's just start here and we'll go through these one at a time. If you want to hear what else we're going to talk about, we're going to go through the topics, but not actually talk about them. We're going to go through why the topics actually don't matter. We're going to go through why you all should be registered for September if you took the August test. And I mean, at this point, it's spilt milk. So if you fucked up and didn't register, it's over. And most of you don't register because you're a goofballs. But we're going to talk about how to avoid that mistake going forwards. We are also going to be talking about the test getting harder, quote unquote. Spoiler, it's not, but we're going to go through why people think it is, / where this comes from a psychological perspective. And yeah, basically we're going to talk about the reusage of topics that LSAC does and all sorts of good stuff. So let's just go one by one and power through these. So first off, the curve. Now the curve is something people talk about. And the way people typically talk about the curve is like -7, -8 or so for a 170. And I believe that this is a complete waste of your energy because who cares whether it's -7 or -8? Do you know that you missed 7 or 8 questions? The answer is you can't, because if you did, you would have scored a 180. If you knew the questions you were getting wrong, you wouldn't have picked them. So the idea that you can approximate your score based on the curve that someone tells you, which first off is a guess, and it's an uninformed guess because the company's predicting the curve, which is -7, -8. The way they are doing that is by talking to their students. Because here's a fun fact. We as LSAT companies are not allowed to take the LSAT. We're not allowed to look at the LSAT. We're kind of not even supposed to talk to our students about the fact that they took the LSAT. But either way, the only people that are giving data about what happened on the LSAT, how hard it was, etc., are people taking the LSAT, not LSAT professionals. And as such, the idea that they are going to accurately convey the difficulty of the test to the people teaching the test is really bad. I will tell you, I work with a lot of LSAT kids scoring all over the place. Even those scoring at the very highest upper bounds are not very good at approximating how hard the test is because on test day, everything feels different. When you're taking the LSAT and it counts and it determines what your score is in terms of how you will get into law school, not just a practice test, people tend to hyper-focus on everything. Every question that you struggle with feels a little bit harder. It sticks in your memory because this one counts. Whereas on a practice test, a lot of you just kind of move past it. You're like, is what it is. I did my best. Let's move on. But because you know it counts on test day, people tend to hyper-focus. So if a reading comp passage feels particularly difficult, people notice that. They spiral, they freak out. On a section, yeah, it sucks when you're just practicing, but people don't tend to give it the same weight. So I will tell you that people taking the LSAT are incredibly unreliable narrators as far as how hard the test is. Now, what that tells us is that the data going into the test companies that are predicting the curve is skewed towards probably people that think it's harder and people that are overly focusing, which makes it really hard to approximate. Further, these people are just not experts. And that's not meant to be a dunk on like, oh, your feelings are invalid. But what it is meant to mean is that people often draw invalid conclusions because their emotional thoughts or feelings get in the way of the objective assessment. And that's an objective assessment that is honestly pretty shaky to begin with. Because even if you're an LSAT super prepper and you took all 58 LSATs and you've been studying for 9 months, in the grand scheme of things, that's a drop in the bucket in terms of how much LSAT you've done. I know it feels like you've done a ton, but you are not an expert to the level you think you are. So anyways, the point is that the curve is very badly approximated, even if it's said to be -10 or -10 or -9 or -10. For one, there's no difference because do you know that you missed 9 questions or 10 questions? Like how the fuck is that useful information? And then second, that's a total guess. So for one, it's not accurate. And then two, even if it were accurate, it's not useful. So whether or not it's -7 or -10 for a 170, what does that help you with? How does that help you get a better score? I guess people get anxiety and they're like, please tell me it's a harder test so I have more leeway. Well, here's the good news. If it was a harder test and you miss more questions, you'll be fine because you'll have missed more questions and everyone else will have struggled. It's just, I get why people do it because it's the natural emotion to say like, oh, this one's hard. So my struggle is not that I was underprepared, but rather this test was abnormally difficult, and as such, on the more questions I missed, that will all be evened out. And the good news is you're right. If it was harder than normal, it will all be evened out in the score. Here's the other issue though. Like we talked about earlier, because there's the emotional weight of actual test day, the actual test is always said to be hard. I have been doing LSAT since early 2021 full time. And since then, I've seen about 10 or what is it, 8 administrations per year. So 8 LSAT administrations by, call it 4 years. It's, what is that, 30 some LSAT administrations? Let's round down to 30. Every single LSAT administration, all 30 of them, or however many there have been, I'm not meaning to cite an actual number, it is always told to me that the LSAT is harder. And the answer is no, it's not. It can't be. Because out of those 30 tests, 15 of them were easier than average and 15 of them were harder than average. That is how averages work. Like, it is literally definitional. But people often perceive that they are harder because, like we talked about, on test day, it all feels more critical. It all feels more real, and you pay more attention to the things that don't feel right. So I'm not here to tell you that you are dumb if you think it was different. I am here to tell you that you are wrong. It was not different. You are imagining things. The LSAT is not changing. Which also brings me to another point. People are claiming that the LSAT is having more formal logic on it. By this, they mean the very formulaic questions, which have always existed, I will caveat as a beginning, where they'll just have, like, say, 3 necessary conditions. Like, maybe to go to the mall, you need to go to your car. To go to your car, you must have your keys. To have your keys, you must look in your drawer. And then they'll say, like, which of the following must be true. And maybe it's like, to go to the mall, you must look in your drawer, by linking all those conditions together. This has always existed. They're on every section ever. And they actually tend to be easier questions if you can read them, which is always the issue, is that people do not understand. Conditional logic is not difficult, folks. It is not a difficult idea. It is a 5th grade level idea. And I don't say that to be condescending. I say it because it is. Where you all struggle is you all get caught in the words, you don't understand what they said, and then it's hard. But the idea that if there's a necessary condition, which links to another condition, and those all link together, therefore it creates a chain of necessary conditions. And to go to the mall, like we just talked about, you must look in your drawer to find your keys, which allow you to drive your car, which allows you to go to the mall. Like, is that rocket science that you must therefore look in your drawer to go to the mall because you got to find your keys? I don't think it is. But people often say they really struggle with those. What I will say is that this has always appeared. You can look back at Prep Test 101, 102, 103, etc., all the way to 158, which are the most, like, recently released LSATs. And there are formal logic, or quote unquote formal logic, questions on all of them. They have not changed in frequency, and it is not changing. One of the ideas people have claimed is that now that logic games, which was removed in 2024, has gone away, LSAC wants to test the same skills, and they're going to bleed more of these questions into logical reasoning. And the answer is no. No, they're not. For one, they reuse sections. The LR sections they're currently using are often created in, like, 2012 or 2013. So these aren't even new sections. They've been reusing them for years. This largely has to do with when the LSAT went online. LSAC only has so many questions in their question bank. And back when the test used to be in person prior to COVID, they would only have one test for the whole administration. So everyone that took the August 2018 test would take the literal same LSAT. They would all have the same reading comp passages. They would all have the same logical reasoning, etc. They can't do that anymore because nowadays the test is online and people take it in staggered waves. So if someone takes it on Thursday and their friend takes it on Sunday, they don't want it to be the exact same test. So they have multiple sections. But what this means is if they now have 4 LSATs per administration instead of 1 LSAT, that is 4 times as many questions as they need. And that is a big strain on LSAC's resources. It's why they have stopped releasing LSATs for practice tests as much. Well, this is my conjecture, but I think it's very substantiated conjecture, is that they need these questions to be used again 4 years down the line. So for example, one of the reading comp passages that they used this year, I actually remember hearing about 2 years ago 3 years ago in 2022. People had this same section. I'm not going to talk about what it is, but the point is that they're reusing them because they're running out of stuff. So when you say the LSAT is evolving, how is that even possible? It's the same test that was being used years ago. They're literally not releasing new tests. Well, I mean, they do have new questions in them, but a lot of them are old. And further, LSAC's whole purpose in the LSAT is to create an apples to apples comparison. If they're changing the LSAT to be different in meaningful material ways, that undercuts their whole purpose. The whole point of the LSAT existing is that you can look at this test and it spits out a number from 120 to 180. And these numbers are relatively comparable to each other across years, across, like, demographics, across administrations. The whole purpose is to be standardized. If they start fucking with the test, that's not standardizing the test. And so what people often do is they really struggle with the conditional reasoning question, or, like, one of these quote unquote formal logic questions. And because of that, it feels more consequential. It feels more real, and they struggle with it. So they're like, oh, fuck, they are really changing how much they're testing it. And the answer is no. No, they're not. You are just noticing it more because on test day, it feels more real. So could LSAC change the LSAT? Like, yes, they could. Of course they could. They have done it. But every time they've changed the LSAT, they have done so with announcement. They are not trying to fool you guys. They are giving you practice tests, and the practice tests are representative of the actual test. The issue with most folks is that they do not prep adequately, and then come test day, the lack of preparation makes it all come crumbling down because you guys haven't done enough time prep. You haven't, like, calloused your mind to it, which I'll concede is a very difficult thing. So I get why you all haven't done this. But the idea that you're now entering a totally new battlefield that you've never seen before is false. And then when people like kind of talk about it on the internet, it becomes this echo chamber of, oh, the LSAT was so much harder. It was so different. And like theoretically, could they change it one administration? Everything could change. They sure could. But I hear this every administration. So it's like, what's more likely? Is it more likely that this is the time that everyone's right? Or is it more likely that human psychology leads to us picking up on these patterns and these patterns manifest every single LSAT administration? I would wager the latter. Is it theoretically impossible? Like, no. But I will tell you that the likelihood of LSAC changing things with no announcement, which they've literally never done before, versus the likelihood of people just overly freaking out because it's test day, I would bet a substantial amount of my net worth that it's the latter and that people are just freaking out because it's test day and they tend to pay more attention to everything. Okay, so that's that. The other thing I'll note is that if you registered for August and you just took August, you should be taking September. You should not stop studying because you all have score ranges and no one ever adequately addresses this. You guys have good days. You guys have bad days. That is part of the LSAT. That's part of being a human. Some days you are more locked in mentally because you've slept better. You have less emotional baggage. You don't have a DMV appointment that's in the back of your head. There's all these things that can like really affect your things. Further, maybe you are getting like, maybe there's 10 questions that you get down to 50-50s. On a good day, you might get 8 of them right. On a bad day, you might get 2 of them right. And that is randomness. It's the world we live in and you can't avoid that. So as such, people tend to have about a 10-point range. Now, most folks underestimate how big their range is. Most people think they have a 2 to 3 point range. I will tell you, I've heard those people too. They're not right. You guys have big ranges and you fail to approximate them because it feels bad. And it's a lot easier to write off your bad days. When you, let's say you're a 155 average, when you score 150, you're just like, oh, fuck, I did bad, like whatever, ignore that. When you score 160, people tend to over-identify with that because it feels better. So people tend to focus on their 160. This is why after the LSAT, people will be like, I scored a 150, but I had 160s on my PTs. What happened? And the answer is actually very simple, which is that you had good days that were 160, you were on average of 155, and then on test day, things went a little bad and you scored a 150. The idea of that 10-point drop, to me, almost never indicates that something has gone wrong on test day. What it usually indicates is that people have misappropriated where they were at. So because you all have this 10-point range, like say you're 155, you could score as low as 150, you could score as high as 160. And in law school admissions, the difference between a 150 and a 160 is ginormous. It is hundreds of thousands of dollars. It is different schools. It is different career opportunities. So as such, you should really get that 160. I mean, I would argue that you should also bump that range upwards. So you're not a 155 average, so you're like a 160 average, which would then move your potential outcome from a 150 to 160 to a 155 to 165. And then you want to hit on that high end of your range because it's random. So if you are a 150 or 155 average and you can score a 155 on average, do you even want that average or should you aim to hit that high end of your range? That when everything goes right, I would argue you should hit for that high end of your range. But here's the issue. It's part of your range, so it's random. On any given test day, you don't know how you're going to perform. Because on any given test day, you could score anywhere in that 10-point range. As such, you should plan on taking the LSAT more than once. Because let's say you took August and you scored average. You scored a 155. If you're capable of a 160, why wouldn't you take September too? Why wouldn't you take October? So whenever you register for the LSAT, you should register for the next LSAT unless the registration deadlines are further out. But this time of year, they're not. If you hadn't registered for September, it is now too late. The way LSAC sets up the deadlines, you cannot register for September. And I know so many people who took August but did not register for September. And that was penny wise but pound foolish. They saved $250, but should they need to take the LSAT again, and should that have given them a higher score, it could have saved them hundreds of thousands of dollars or tens of thousands of dollars. So sure, they saved $250, but it was very short-sighted because they should exhaust all their attempts and apply. Like, I get it's not fun to take the LSAT again. I get it's not fun to pay LSAC another $250 because they set up their deadlines in a really shitty way. However, the question is, what is best for you as an individual? And what's best for you as an individual is to exhaust your takes and get your maximum score. And sure, it could be that you score your highest score in August, you've hit the top end of your range, you're that 155 average and you score 160. Then should you take September? Like, no, why would you? Because you've already hit the high end of your range. Unless you've gotten better, there's no purpose. But that's not everyone. In fact, that is very few people. That is maybe 10% of people. If we assume that only 10% of people will get, the top 10% of their range, that's, fairly a safe assumption. That's basic math. So you all should register for September. I know a lot of you haven't. So here's what you need to do. You need to register for October. And if you're taking October, you need to register for November as well. I get it sucks. I get it's not fun to fork that over to LSAC, but also it is insanely short-sighted not to. Like, yes, it's $250 and that is real money. I get that. Also, this is your career you're talking about. To not take the LSAT seriously is such a fuck up and could really screw you over. So, I mean, it's your call fundamentally, but I think it is insane to not register for the LSAT twice. No one does it. And it's honestly hard because like I'll talk to people. And like I asked one person who checked in with me after August and she was telling me like, oh, I took August. It went pretty good. Like, thanks for all your help. I was like, are you taking September? And she's like, no. I was like, what? Like, why are you taking September? That's so goofball. Like, you very well could have scored on the bottom half of your range. And if you score on the bottom half of your range, why wouldn't you take it again? Because now at earliest, you can take October, which is a bummer. Anyways, so yeah, take the LSAT twice. And for all of you that have not taken the LSAT, yes, when you register for the next two. Do not just register for one. I get the inclination to do it, but it is incredibly short-sighted. And I don't want to say stupid because I mean, it, I think people just don't understand the consequences. And you guys are delusionally optimistic, like, oh, I'll just like clutch up on test day and crush it. And some of you do, but some of you don't. So take the pressure off. Give yourself those extra takes. If you don't need to use them, you don't have to. But should you, like, it is better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. And there are a lot of people that are going to need it and not have it in these coming days. And that sucks because now they're going to be taking October at the earliest. And that's a bummer. And further, if you took August, you're ready for September. Like, why would you take August if you're not ready for September? If that's the case, you're not ready for August either. So it's incredibly silly where people are like, oh, I'll take August, and then if it doesn't go well, I'll prep for November. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? If you're not ready for September, don't take August. Like, I don't know. It's silly. People do it. There's a lot of these, I'd say, very common mistakes people make, but they are mistakes, and you can avoid them. So don't do that. That's silly. That's silly shit. Don't do that. Oh yeah, what else do we have? So yeah, test getting harder, like we talked about, it's not a thing. So here's the other thing. There's another company that does the predicted topics for the LSAT. They will talk about what reading comp passages are coming. And they have the data to accurately predict the reading comp passages that are coming. They actually do know like what the passages are likely to be on, whether it be like the certain artist, the scientific topic, the history, whatever the fuck. But here's the thing. The LSAT is not a content test. The LSAT is a skills-based test. It is testing you on not what do you know about tigers, but rather what did the passage say about tigers. So I will argue that that is actually worse than useless. It is hurtful in a few ways. One, when you have outside info, it's pretty easy for the outside info to taint what the author has said. And on reading comp, it is not asking you what is true. It is asking you what the author said. So when you know a lot about tigers, you can let that outside knowledge trick you into answers that aren't real. So I often find the easiest passages are the passages you know nothing about, because it's really easy to segregate your outside knowledge versus the passage knowledge. Because when you don't have any outside knowledge, it can't get mingled together. You only have what the passage gave you. So ironically, by doing preparation about tigers, it can actually make you worse because now you have this outside knowledge. Further, and here's the real critique, it's not useful. It doesn't help you get anything right. And it does take that time, which could be spent studying actual LSAT questions, and it directs it towards this kind of bullshit preparation of, I'm going to learn about tigers so I feel more comfortable. And I will argue that that is for people scoring low to have a kind of false security blanket. If you are scoring 140, 150, 160, and you know it's about tigers, that's not going to help you. It might make you feel better, but it's not going to help you, because what actually makes you comfortable with the LSAT is not knowing about the topic. There are all sorts of LSAT reading topics I know nothing about. It is normal because I don't know most of these things. Like art, I don't know shit about art. Law, I don't really know anything about legal systems in like France. However, I am comfortable with LSAT reading comp because I've done a shit ton of LSAT reading comp. So it doesn't matter what the topic is because I kick ass. And so what I will say is that it is incredibly tempting. People love it, but it is not useful. Knowing about tigers does not help you answer what the passage says about tigers. It might subjectively make you feel a little bit better, but it is a false security blanket because once again, it is taking away from time that could actually be used to study. And then second, it doesn't actually help you understand it. So with that, I will say that this is a pretty useless thing. What I will note is that the predictions are accurate. They do accurately predict the topics are, but like, why do you care? Why do you care what the topics are? It doesn't help you answer any questions. If you're scoring 145, you're still fucked. If you know what the topics are, like it doesn't help you. If you're scoring 175, it doesn't matter. Like you're going to score fine either way. You don't need to know the topics. So I will argue that what it does is it gives people this false insecurity. They feel like they're prepped and they're not prepped. Because if you have scored a 145, 155 on your practice test and you know the topics, it is not going to change your score upwards. It's not going to, I mean, it could change it downwards just because you bring in outside info. In all likelihood, I think it's a mulligan. And it's a mulligan that is very attractive. People like to feel better, but it's not making you better at the LSAT. And at Hey Future Lawyer, we're all about making you better at the LSAT. We're not making here to like make you feel better about the LSAT. If like through preparation, we think you will feel better because you'll be like, oh fuck, I understand this. I'm gonna kick ass on test day. But I'm not here to give security blankets. And that's a security blanket that's not real. It doesn't actually help and make you feel better, but it's not useful. Okay, so that's that. What else do we have? I wrote this down, but I can't even read my own handwriting now. Take the test. What did I write? I don't even know. It says take the test, and then I think it says something too. Yeah, I have no fucking clue what I wrote. So we're gonna skip that. If it comes up, it comes up. Maybe it was take the test again, as in like you guys should plan on taking the test again. I guess it comes back. Well, I'll touch on gravity of the LSAT. Your guys' LSAT scores controls your future. Like, it's not polite to say this. It's not fun to say this, but it's true. It does control the type of schools you get into. A 170 versus a 173 could be the difference between attending a T14 versus not attending a T14. And I'm not here to say that you have to max out your LSAT score, but I am here to say that it's silly not to. to not get your best score, whether that's a 170 or a 160 or a 155, is silly shit. Because this is how they allocate money. It's how you get into different law schools. And the truth of it is that different law schools produce different types of attorneys. And if you are okay being a public defender, then sure, it doesn't matter what type of law school you go to. If you're going to law school because you want to make $700K one day, which some of you do, and I have no judgment for that. If you want to do that, like go kick ass. I'm rooting for you. It does matter what school you go to. And pointing to the partner who did it from Podunk Law School does not disprove this. Like, yes, there are people that have beat the odds, but do you want to have to beat the odds and be the 1 in 10,000 out of the law school that you go to? Or would you rather go to Harvard and be just normal? Like that's what kids from Harvard do. And it's not because kids from Harvard are smarter, like that's part of it, but it's also because these institutions are incredibly prestige driven. Harvard gets different firms to hire from them because those firms trust the Harvard admission staff. So like they know that Harvard kicks ass and that when we hire someone from Harvard, the odds of that person kicking ass are really high. And like, does this suck for the people that attend lower ranked law school? Sure, like it does, but it's also reality. And you guys have not committed to a law school yet. So you can choose what kind of law school you go to. There are good law schools, there are average law schools, and there are bad law schools. Most of them are average. There's not that many good ones. There's not that many bad ones. Like the good ones are maybe 1 through 20-ish. And there are a few exceptions that are like in the top 20, but I would not consider good. There are also ones that are outside of the top 20, but I would consider good. Just to give examples of each. Minnesota is up there. I do not consider them a good law school in terms of these outcomes. UCI is not in there, as in University of California, Irvine. They do have really good outcomes. So there are exceptions, but for the most part, it's pretty in line with that kind of 1 to 20 rank. Then from rank 20-ish to like rank 100-ish, it's kind of like average law schools where the top of the class gets good jobs and everyone else doesn't. So if you're in the top, which at some schools is the top 30%, top 20%, at other schools it's the top 5%, you're great. But that is a minority of the class and a substantial minority. So I like to advocate that if you're going to this for prestige, for the money, to have a kick-ass career where you are like the rich aunt or whatever, which I know some of you, that's what you're caring for, pick schools that make that a reasonable outcome. Because going to an average law school, that is not a reasonable outcome. It is a possible outcome. But that's like saying how playing the lottery you can win. It's like, yeah, you can win. I'm not saying that lottery winners don't exist. That does not disprove the idea that playing the lottery is silly and you shouldn't do it, especially when it's your financial future in your career. So fundamentally, it's all up to you what you do. But I will say that just getting an LSAT that's tweaking in a law school, unless your goal is to literally like do wills and trusts for old people or to be a public defender, then it actually does matter where you go. So like, once again, what you want out of life, that's your decision. But as far as like, does it matter? The answer is yes, it does matter. And there's a lot of anti-messaging towards this of people saying, oh, it doesn't matter where you go to law school. And a lot of this is cope. A lot of people are at law schools that do not give them opportunities. And instead of acknowledging that that's what's up, they will instead say like, oh, it doesn't matter where I go. You can get big out of lower ranked schools. And all of this is technically true, but the outcome likelihoods are so much lower. The likelihood of getting a high paid job out of low ranked schools, and by low ranked, I mean like out of the top 20, it is low. It is not most of the class. It is the minority of the class. Most of the people make like 70, 80K. And that's fine because I'm not here to judge. But what I am here to say is that's reality. To say that it doesn't matter where you go to law school is fucking bullshit. It is not true. It absolutely does matter. So if you guys care about your career, which I presume you do, pick schools that actually get you there. Like, and for what's worth, if you don't care about your career, I don't care either. Like, it's your life. I don't even know your name. But I do know that some of you want these careers. And I also know that a lot of people are going to, it's attempting to be kind, but it's being kind, not nice. Telling people that it doesn't matter where you go to law school, it might feel good. It might make them sleep better today. But 10 years down the road, has that helped that person? Did you help them when you helped them go into debt out of school where they're never going to pay off their loans? Did you help them when you sold them a dream about a salary they are never going to make? I don't think that is nice. Like, I try to be kind, not nice. And being nice, I may have said that backwards. Being nice is telling people what they want to hear. Being kind is telling them the truth and giving people the information to make their own decisions. I think I'm one of the only kind people in this space, which not to like pat myself on the back too much, but there's a lot of missing contacts in the LSAT world. There's a lot of just talking about how to get in. There's a lot of just talking about how to get like, a higher LSAT score or whatever. And that's fine and all, but I think it also is somewhat negligent, or not negligible, what's the right word? Negligent, when people do not couch that with like, hey, if you go to an average law school, here's your outcomes. And should you want those outcomes, great. Because like being an average attorney is not even a bad career if that's what you want to do. But it is when you are like, I'm gonna make 400K as an attorney. I don't need to go to a top school. Like I had a conversation with a girl, a sorority girl at a Pac-12 school. I'm not gonna go deeper than that because it doesn't matter. But she was like, oh, I don't need to go to a T14. I just want to go to a school where I can make 400K by like year 5. I was like, it's like, you do need to go to a T14. For one, a lot of T14 grads do not get that salary. That is a very high salary for year 5. And it is possible. I'm not here to say you can't make that money. You can absolutely make that money in law. It is very real. Also, you do need to plan on going to a T14 if those are your goals. Like those goals out of average T50 law school are not reasonable. You are unlikely to get those. So anyways, that's on why you should take the LSAT seriously. What else do we have? Oh, estimating performance. Yeah, so after the LSAT, I often get emails, people like, oh, I crashed it, or oh, I bombed it. What I'll say is that you all, because we talked about earlier with the emotional tingency or taint of actual test day, are really bad at approximating how you did. People often will email me saying, I did the worst ever, I'm going to cancel. And I've heard those people get like a 175 when they return. It is insanely crazy how bad you guys are at estimating. Further, people say, I crushed it, felt so good. And then it comes back and they're on the bottom half of their range. Because the reality is you guys are going to score somewhere in your range. If you took it like you took your practice test, which you should have, you will score in that roughly 10-point range. And exceptions to that are incredibly uncommon on both directions. I will note with one exception, which is when people try to do something different. If you are someone who scores a 155 and you do half the test, and then on test day, you're like, I'm going to do it all. I'm going to take monster. I'm going to crank through. Those people often underperform because they're now changing their variables. They're not doing it how they practiced and they're fucking with their mojo. So it is possible to underperform. I have not really seen people overperform. I've seen people score a high score on test day where they score like 2 points better than they've ever done, but it always is kind of in track with their range / trajectory. It's never like they were averaging 160 and then on test day they score 170. I've not seen that. I'm sure it's happened because the LSAT administers thousands and thousands of LSATs, but it is incredibly uncommon. And the other thing I will note is that out of the emails I get, the amount of people that accurately estimate their score is incredibly low. Most people are not good at estimating it. So if you took the LSAT, you feel like you did really well, I'm rooting for you. I hope you did. I would still plan on taking the LSAT again. And then second, if you think you bombed it, probably not. You probably scored somewhere in your range. You may have been on the low end of your range, but the idea that you like bombed it is often ficky, or not ficky. That's not a word, finicky, because people tend to overfocus, like we talked about, and as such, everything that went wrong felt more wrong on test day. Okay, and then the final other thing I'm going to talk about is proctors. So there were nightmare stories, both in person and on remote. What I will say is that it sucks in both. Like it's kind of like choose the devil you'd rather deal with. The in-person proctors can suck. They are not always on top of their shit. They can have the air conditioning turned down to 60 degrees. They can not understand the LSAT. There might be a kid next to you crunching on ice or sneezing or coughing. That all happens. So that can suck. Also, the online proctors can also suck. They can go AWOL. This is actually something that happens fairly often with the LSAT where one of their shifts will end. So let's say you logged on with one person at 9 a.m. Now it's 10:30. That one person shift may have ended. So now you have a new proctor. And often the handoff to the new proctor does not go well. They often fuck up. And that also sucks. But what I will say is that when you hear the horror stories, you can kind of pick which horror stories you'd rather deal with. Would you rather deal with online proctors from your own home? That's what I would do. Or would you rather go in person and talk to an actual person and have them resolve it for you? It's your call. What I will say is that this is not like one is objectively perfect and the other sucks. A lot of people say take it in person. It's a lot smoother. And it can be smoother. It can also be more of a disaster. So I guess the question is, what would rattle you more? Would sitting at your computer for 30 minutes while your proctor is AWOL rattle you more? Or would having some kid sneezing next to you for your LSATs rattle you more? Because these are both possible outcomes. And I'm not here to say what you should or should not do because people are very different, but really approximate it. And when everyone says like, oh, you should take it in person or you should take it at home, I mean, I would take it at home if it were me, but it's your call. I do think the learning science tends to show that when you take it in the place you study, people tend to do better. So the science says take it at home. The internet says take it in person. I say do whatever you want. It's not that big of a deal. If you're good at the LSAT, you're still going to be good at the LSAT, whether you take it in person or remote. What I will also say is that you can run into nightmare stories because I'll be like, oh, you should take it. Like I actually made an Instagram post once, and this is like shout out stupid argument, not by me, by the person who commented. I was like, you should take it online. Here's why. And it was my opinion, but you know, that's what happens on Instagram. I post my opinion. And someone's like, oh, I took it in person, had a disaster. I was like, oh my God. Like, I'm not saying that's, or sorry, they took it online, had a disaster. I'm like, are you stupid? Like, of course that can happen. Of course there can be exceptions. You can take it online and have issues. My point was broadly that the advantages outweigh the disadvantages, not that the disadvantages don't exist. I think I got pretty lippy and said like, hey, your 150 is showing, which was a little rude, but also like true, because that would be a flawed LSAT argument. Like if, like, let's say we have a dialogue and Ben says, hey, the advantages of taking the LSAT at home outweigh the disadvantages of taking it at home. And then someone responded and said, oh, I had a bad experience at home. I'm like, right. That doesn't address my argument. That just points that there's a bad situation. Bad situations happen. That does not disprove a rule. That's like saying, I mean, what's another example of this? Like people that study for the LSAT tend to do better than those who do not. Bob is a genius and did not study for the LSAT, yet he scored a 180. Therefore, you don't need to study for the LSAT. It's like, yeah, of course exceptions exist. There are some people that just like are naturally freaks at things. That doesn't disprove the idea that you should study for a consequential, high stakes, learnable test. So yeah, Instagram comments are actually really fun because people are bad at arguing. And I think they forget that like I'm objectively good at arguing. Like I'm not here to say I'm right on everything. In fact, guaranteed I'm wrong on things because I'm a human and we as humans are all wrong on certain things. That is like part of being human. If you think you're not, I don't think you have enough introspection to really realize that you are just another human operating on planet Earth. I do my best. I try to be right. I try to think through things. I also am human and as such am not perfect, as are you. Anyway, that being said, I tend to think things through. So the idea that like I'm not going to back up my ideas is always amusing to me. It's like, hey, idiot, like I didn't say that it always goes perfect at home. My conclusion was it's better than the alternative. And that I stand by. But once again, if you want to take it in person, like knock yourself out. I don't give a shit. It's always funny though. And yeah, there's also been quite the kerfuffle on r/LSAT. This is a separate thing about accommodations. We're not going to do accommodations again. I've done accommodations a lot. The basic idea is that accommodations are crazy, out of control. It is incredibly easy to get them. People do not seem to quite understand that. It is, if you get a note from your doctor saying you get stressed for the LSAT, you get accommodations and you get what you ask for. If you have ADHD, if you have dyslexia, if you have a physical condition, which I think accommodations are much more reasonable for. Like, should you like say have to go to the bathroom because you're like pregnant and you pee a lot more because like your bladder is being pressured? Like, yeah, of course you should have accommodations for that. Like, what? Why wouldn't you be able to? It seems like that's pretty quickly stretched out from situations like that of the pregnancy and peeing to like, someone had to stretch for their leukemia. That is the kind of case that LSAC lost, to my knowledge. Not 100% sure of that. So if you want to repeat that, please Google it before doing it. Although I am pretty sure that's what it says. Like the case is public record. Anyway, the point is that accommodations are easy to get. They are not hard to get at all. Everyone who asks them gets them, and they get extra time. The LSAT is a test that is largely constrained by time. So accommodated takers take an easier version of the test, and everyone can get them. To me, it's a fairly broken system. And yeah, we're not going to go deeper. Let's just go to actual LSAT question, or not actual LSAT questions, but LSAT strategy questions. So let's see what we got. Okay, here we go. So yeah, here's someone who emailed me in and said, hey, Ben, congrats on your marriage. As a regular listener of the pod, I know how much you love well wishes at the start of your emails, so I hope you've been doing great. Thank you, friend, for the well wishes. They continue. In all seriousness, though, I wanted to ask your opinion on whether you think I should take this upcoming LSAT. So this was about August. I responded back then, but we'll just address it. To give a little bit of background, my goal is to score as high as I can. I would hope so. Like, yeah, of course. But if I had to put a number on it, I guess I'll be like everyone else and say 175 plus. Good for you. Like, why not? Just shoot for the stars. My most recent PTs have come in just under this. On my most recent test, I've gotten a 170, 171, 170, 164, 172, and 173. So yeah, in all likelihood, they're probably like low 170s plus or minus 5 points. It does appear that it might be high 160s plus or minus 5 points, because even though you have those 170s, you also had a 164 and you haven't scored above a 173. So in all likelihood, that's like a 168 plus or minus 5. Could you score 175 on test day? Like maybe. Would I expect it? Like absolutely not. I would expect you to probably score like a 170. They continue. When I review, I wind up kicking myself because the questions I got wrong seem so obvious. I just missed something the first time around. Yeah, that's the LSAT for you. It's also why timing is such an unlock. When you have 53 minutes as opposed to 35 minutes, it makes it a lot easier to catch those things. They continue. Making matters worse, early on in my prep, before I came across Hey Future Lawyer, I was a bit stupid and wasted 2 official attempts. I got a 158, which I canceled, and a 166 on those. In both cases, I had this thought that I would magically outperform my numbers on test day. Yeah, which doesn't happen. Now that I've learned the hard way, that's not the case. I'm inclined to withdraw from this test. Yeah, I guess the question is, are you applying this cycle, which is what we'll get to. They continue. So my question is whether you think I should actually take this. I'm inclined to say no, but I'm curious if you have any thoughts. And other than eating the cost of the test, what if any penalties exist for withdrawing? Thank you. Best regards, so-and-so. So yeah, there is no penalty other than you don't get to take the test and you lose your money. But you get to take the test, like it does not burn one of your 5 takes. So if you withdraw before the LSAT occurs, then you get that take back. You don't burn your take, which this person seems to be aware of. I also like that, like, let's say you really need a 175 for your admission outcomes. It's not likely to happen. And you only have 3 takes left. I would keep prepping because even though you are scoring in the like high 160s, low 170s, that leaves room for understanding. You have things you can clean up. So I would keep studying and figure those out. Like there are, on every single question or test you took, you missed like 5 to 7 questions at minimum, probably more. So I would clean those up, figure out what's going on. You can get better. So I basically asked like, hey, it depends on when you're applying. Because like if you're applying this cycle no matter what, which is silly, but a lot of you do commit yourselves to that, then you should take it because your PT range is substantially higher than your scoring record. That being said, if you are open to applying later and you want to max out your LSAT score, then yeah, you should keep studying and wait until you get a higher score on your PTs. So they said, I'm certainly open to waiting another cycle or 2. And at that point, the answer is very clear, which is that if you're open to waiting and you have more points in you, which you do, because if you keep studying, you will keep getting better, then yeah, You should just wait till you like your scores better and take the test once you get there. You're going to get there. It could be different matters of time. Like, could it be another month? Maybe it could be another 5 months. Like, I hope not, but it could be. So if you're open to that, and this 171 versus 175 is the difference between going to Harvard versus not going to Harvard. What is it worth it to you to wait a year and study more? I think it is. So shout out to you for, I don't think you took the test, but I appreciate that you did the hard thing, because a lot of your competitors, a lot of them weren't even close to your practice test scores, and they still took the LSAT, which was goofball shit. But LSAT takers are known for doing their goofball shit. Okay, I have another email from someone. This is someone in class, more about LSAT studying than it is about LSAT administration stuff, but let's see what they say. They say, hey man, I hope you're doing well, which everyone fucking says. Not for those of you that are new listeners, it's like one of my, I wouldn't say pet peeves, but it's a little silly that you all say this. You guys can just start the email. You don't have to say, I hope you're doing well. Like, I know that you guys don't think you guys don't wish cancer on me. No one ever is like, hey, fuck you. Actually, that's not true. People have sent me emails like that. If you want to email your hey, fuck you email to ben@heyfuturelawyer.com, I do read all of them. I do not respond to all of them, but I do read them. And if they're nice, I respond to basically all of them, unless you are annoying, at which point I will stop responding to you. Because if you just keep emailing me month after month and you don't pay me, it's like, I do a lot to be a resource. I am not your LSAT and personal statement monkey. I am here to provide a resource. I think I give a ton away for free. And also, if you guys want to work with me, like, I do stuff. Also, I have bills to pay. I have shit to do. And as such, if you're like, hey, will you review my personal statement for freezies? I'm like, yeah, if you want it on the podcast. Otherwise, no, because I don't do that. I mean, if you want to pay me, you can, but otherwise, no. Anyways, and honestly, like, it is worth it for a lot of you. Like, you should. Most of you need to get eyes on your personal statements. But also, I don't really do personal statements. It's such a time suck. It's at the point where, like, I don't even really like taking money for them, let alone doing them for free. So like, when someone asks me to like do it for free, it's like, are you joking? Like, what? No. Anyways. So they say, hope you're doing well. I've been encountering issues when I'm in testing mode. I recently took a PT under testing conditions and my requested accommodations. When it comes to taking full-length PTs, I struggle with brain fog and mental fatigue. When I take PTs by section, like how we do for homework, I have a lot more mental clarity and can go through sections knowing that I at least attempted them to my best abilities. I think maybe it is my anxiety, but when I go into testing mode, I really struggle trying to read and understand what the passage and questions are saying or asking me no matter how slow I go. Do you have any suggestions on or advice that can help me with this issue? And yeah, so this is, I'd say, not common, but it is normal. Like, most people do not have this issue, but it certainly comes up, which is that when you take sections back to back, it is more time, or not time intensive. It is more brain intensive than just taking sections in isolation. What I will say is that get more exposure. Like, the LSAT is a hard test and experience fatigue is normal, but how do you solve that fatigue? Well, you get more reps. If you do this day after day, you are going to get better at the task and you are going to get more comfortable with it. The other thing is get better at the test. You didn't say how you're scoring. Honestly, I don't know how you're scoring. I know it's not perfect, but I also don't think you're scoring terribly low. As you better understand questions, it becomes less fatiguing. When I do LSAT questions, it is usually not fatiguing. I can have days where I'm just not locked in. I'm like, oh my God, what am I looking at? Like, I still experience those days too. They're not common, but it does happen. Most days it's just like, this is easy. Like, it's obviously A, and here's why it's obviously A. But it is normal for it to happen sometimes. If it is happening most of the time, what that indicates is you're not as good at the LSAT as you should be. And your real fix is not, oh, you need some timing issue. It is, you need to get better at the test, which you can do through sections. Now, it is also true that there can be some endurance to it. And like, if you struggle with the LSAT and you have to do that section by section, it does get exhausting. So I recommend it to this person. They do a practice test every week or every other week, depending on their schedule. I don't think you need to do one every day. In fact, I would really advise against it. People do that. It is often goofball shit because they then often do not review, which is incredibly important. But anyways, the point is that I would get more exposure. The LSAT is a tough test, so experience mental fatigue is normal. However, you want to get those reps in, so focus on getting better at the LSAT and take some tests. So yeah, that is all we have for this week. Real quick, just announcements. What are we up to? Well, we're always studying. If you're studying for the LSAT, come study with us. Like, it's a bit of a self-promotion, but it's also true. The other LSAT prep out there is not ideal, largely. Tutors largely suck. I keep talking to people coming from other tutors, and the amount of shit that random tutors come up with is incredibly insane. Like, the stuff people say, they're like, oh, I learned all the indicator words. I'm like, you know, those aren't real, right? Like, fun fact, indicator words on the LSAT do not exist. So if you're studying that, it's nonsense. Conditional logic should take you maybe 20 minutes to understand, not 20 hours. And there is one of the most popular LSAT courses, and their conditional logic takes 20 hours. Many of you probably know who I'm talking about if you've been in the LSAT world for a while. If you haven't, you're good. You avoided it. You would know if you had gone through them. It is not a hard concept. Like, this task has been so overcomplicated. Come study with us. I'm on class live basically every day. We hang out. You can talk to me all the time. You can get explanations. They're all done by me. We have a bunch that are sampled on our website for Prep Test 123, so you can see what you're getting before you sign up. this test is too serious, or it's too important not to take serious. So come study with us. Like, we have all sorts of good offers. Join our email list. You'll hear about everything we're up to. Come to a free class. We have one the last week of every month. Our one this month, I want to say, is on August 27th. It's whatever the final Wednesday is, and you can sign up via our site. You can also get automatic invites sent to your email if you just join our email list. So yeah. Otherwise, if you have anything you want to send to the show, email ben@heyfuturelawyer.com, and I will see you all next week. So see you, folks. If you enjoyed what we talked about today or learned something new, please leave a review or a rating. It really does help us out and helps us reach more people. If you have a question or anything you want talked about in the world of LSAT or law school admissions, you can always email support@heyfuturelawyer.com to get it in the podcast agenda. Just put podcast in the subject and we will talk about it on the show. Alrighty, that's all we have for today. So I will see you all next time.